Welcome to Mode Bespoke. I'm Martinez. For today's tutorial, we're going to be working on a rectangular shawl. Now this is a lightweight shawl. It's ideal for intermediate crocheters, and we are going to be using Tunisian crochet stitches. So let's get started. You can find the printable PDF pattern for this project at modebespoke.com. I'll leave a link in the description box below. Alright, so here's a look at the shawl that we're going to be crocheting today. Now this is a rectangular shawl, and we're going to use Tunisian stitching, so for this top part. And then we're going to make a nice double crochet border, which is nice and simple like this. This is going to be a lightweight spring shawl. Now you can use any yarn you want, but here is a list of the materials that I use. I'm using this Knit Pal yarn, and it's called Cottonista. This is 100% cotton. Here's some information on the yarn itself. The pack, so because you can find this on Amazon, I'll link it down in the description box, but the pack comes with 10 skeins. Yes, I say skeins, not skeins. It comes with 10 of them. We're only using 8. So you can make this shawl wider or longer if you want. I'll tell you how to do that, but we're going to be using 8 of these. So you'll need this. You'll also need a 5.5mm hook and a regular hook. But let's take a look at the stitch here. I have no idea what this stitch is called. So if any of you know what this stitch is called, please let me know. There was only a number attached to it when I learned it. And yeah, so I have no idea what it's called. But I'll show you how to work this stitch. It is worked in multiples of 2. So we're going to begin with a chain of 84 stitches. I'm going to make a small sample, so I'm not going to make all 84 stitches. But this is worked in even multiples. So if you want to make your shawl wider, add more stitches. So 84 is going to be the width. So here we go. You make your slip knot by wrapping your yarn around your fingers twice, and then you're going to insert your hook in through the first loop, grab the second loop, and just pull through. Tighten the knot by pulling on the individual threads, and you're ready to begin. So again, chain 84 for those of you making the full-size shawl. For those of you that don't know how to make a chain, you're going to wrap the yarn around your hook. Here's this top loop, pull the top loop through the bottom loop, and there is one. So that's one chain. Yarn over, pull this top loop through the bottom one, 2, yarn over, pull through 3, 4, and so forth, until you get a chain of 84 or any other even number of stitches. Alright, now once you've got your chain, you're going to begin a foundation row, and for those of you that are more experienced, it's just a regular foundation row. For those of you that need to see this, you're going to go into the second stitch of your chain, so skip the first one, go into the second one. You're going to insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over, and you're going to pull up a loop. Leave the loop on your hook. Go into the next stitch, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over, and pull up a loop. You're going to repeat this in every one of the every one of the stitches of your chain until you have the same number of loops that you chained. So if you chained 84 stitches, you should have 84 loops on your hook. Alright, so once you have cast on all of your stitches, your hook will look a little like this, only with a lot more stitches, of course. So the return pass is where you start giving shape to the stitch. So this is going to be a little bit different than a traditional return pass for Tunisian crochet. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to yarn over and pull through the first loop, and then we're going to chain 1. So yarn over, pull through this first loop, chain 1. Now for the rest of the stitches, except for the last 2, you're going to do yarn over, and you're going to pull through 3 loops. So here's the yarn over off. You're going to pull through these next 3 loops, all right? So yarn over and pull through 3. So 1, 2, 3, chain 1. And then yarn over, pull through 3. So here are 3 loops. So yarn over, pull through 3. So 1, 2, 3, chain 1. And then we repeat. Yarn over, pull through 3, and chain 1. You're going to repeat this till you get to the end. The end is going to be just a little bit different because it's a yarn over, pull through 2, but I'll show that to you here in just a moment. All right, so when you get to the end of the row, it's going to look a little like this. So you're going to have to chain 1, because I did the yarn over, pull through 3, so chain 1, you'll be left with your 2 loops, and then you just yarn over and pull through both of those loops. So that's going to be the return pass you're going to use throughout the entire project. Now, this was just the foundation row. This does not count into your row count. Let's go into row number 1, And row number 1, you're going to begin with a Tunisian, it's a Tunisian simple stitch, but you're going to do 2 together. So these 2 vertical stitches right here, so this would be vertical stitch number 2, because this is number 1. So you have number 2 and number 3. As you can see, they are squished together, and it's like this throughout the entire foundation row. You're going to need to crochet these 2 together and then yarn over, because we're still going to have to maintain a stitch count. So Tunisian simple stitch these 2 together by inserting your hook behind the top leg of the vertical stitch, or the top loop, yarn over, and you're going to pull it through both of those vertical stitches. To maintain stitch count, you're going to yarn over and leave that loop on your hook. Now when I say maintain stitch count, that first vertical stitch, you already had it on your hook, so you always skip it. So here, I'll go back and show you that real quick. So at the beginning of the row, see, there's the first vertical stitch, and you already have that on your hook. When you do the Tunisian simple stitch 2 together, you're only going to pull up 1 loop, but you still have 2 vertical stitches. So you're going to need to yarn over so that you have 3 loops for the 3 vertical stitches of the row so far. Alright, so now we go into this next one, and again this one has the 2 vertical stitches close together like this. You're going to Tunisian simple stitch 2 together, so there you go, like that, yarn over, and pull up a loop. And then you're going to yarn over and leave a loop on your hook. So this will be the 2 vertical stitches. They're right there, and now they are on your hook. Repeat in the next one, so Tunisian simple stitch 2 together, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over and leave that on the hook. So Tunisian simple stitch 2 together, yarn over, Tunisian simple stitch 2 together, yarn over. And for those of you using the written pattern, this is that TS2 together. So it's TS2 and then TOG. I'll put it somewhere on the screen so you see it. And once you get to the end of the row, so remember that we're maintaining stitch count. So for those of you that like to count your stitches, go through and count them. Make sure you have the same stitch count at the end of the row. For those of you that are lazy like I am, I don't do that. So just remember that when you get to these last 2 vertical stitches, yarn over at the end, because remember that this is always the Tunisian 2 together is the first of the 2 stitches of the 2 vertical stitch count. So always do your yarn over at the end. So never at the beginning, just always at the end. And then you're going to cast on into this final stitch of the row. That's how you're going to see it on the pattern. It's going to say cast on at the end stitch, which is going to be this one right here. This one is for the previous row, so this bottom one doesn't count. It's going to be this one right here. Insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over, and pull up a loop. And now we're going to repeat that same return pass that we did in the previous row. So yarn over, pull through 1, chain 1, and now yarn over, pull through 3, chain 1, yarn over, pull through 3, so 1, 2, 3, chain 1, yarn over, pull through 3, chain 1, and so forth until you get to the end. Remember that at the end you're going to do your chain 1, and then it's going to be a yarn over, pull through 2, not a yarn over, pull through 3. But I'm trying to hurry this along so I can show you what that'll look like. So here we're at the end. So it was yarn over, pull through 3, and then we're here. So chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2. Now throughout this work, try to maintain as loose a tension as you possibly can. So it's going to make casting on in your return pass a lot easier. So try to loosen up the tension as much as you can. It's also going to make for a very lightweight fabric. Alright, so moving on. So from here on out, you're going to repeat what's going to be row 2 and that return pass that I just showed you. So that's what you're going to repeat for a total of 207 rows. So for those of you that are a bit more advanced, the foundation row does not count. This is the foundation row. We just completed row 1. You need 207 rows and then a bind off. So the bind off will essentially be row number 208. We'll get there a little bit further along. Alright, so for row number 2, remember you already have that first vertical stitch is on your hook, so we skip it. This is what your work will look like. So you still have the 2 vertical stitches. So here's the first one. So see, here's the front leg and the back leg. But here is the second one. This one is extended because it was the yarn over. So here's that front leg, and back here is that back leg. So it doesn't look like it, but these are 2 vertical stitches. So what we're going to do is the same process that we did in the last row, only this one just looks a little bit different. So you're going to do your Tunisian, so it's the Tunisian stitch 2 together. So here's that first vertical stitch. So here we go, and there's the second one. Yarn over, pull up a loop, and then we yarn over. So we still have our 3. Go into the next one, so TS2 together, yarn over, and then again TS2 together, yarn over. There we go, yarn over, here it is. I almost forgot my yarn over. And you're just going to repeat this for the remaining rows. So it's really that simple. So again, it's 207 rows and then a bind off. So we'll start the return pass one more time together, and then I'll leave you to complete your work. But here's this end stitch. So here's what it looks like. The stitch that you cast on at the end, which again, the written pattern says cast on final stitch. So it's going to be this one down here. If for whatever reason, you end up stitching in this one, it's not a big deal. Just be consistent with whichever stitch you choose. But pick one and stick with it. All right, so we're going to go here. What did I do? So I need my yarn over, and then we're going to go in here. So TS2 together, yarn over, and then cast on into that final stitch of the row. So I've completed the length I want for my sample, and we're ready to work on the bind off. Remember that for the length, it has to be an odd number of rows. That does not include the foundation row. So beginning at row 1, it's an odd number of rows. All right, so let's begin with the bind off. For the bind off, we're going to create an edge up here at the top that's very similar to the one here at the bottom to just close off the stitching. So for this, we're going to cast on that Tunisian 2 together. So TS2 together using the first 2 vertical stitches right here. And once you have a loop, you're going to close as a single crochet. So you're going to yarn over and pull through these 2 loops. Now, in the space following this vertical stitch, the one that twists here diagonally, I guess it doesn't twist, it lays diagonally, you're going to use the chain space, so right in here, to insert your hook. And you're going to single crochet. So instead of a yarn over, you're doing a single crochet to hold the spot. And now you go to the next 2 vertical stitches. So Tunisian, stitch 2 together, and once you have your 2 loops, you single crochet. And you're going to use the space right after this diagonal vertical stitch, so right in here. And single crochet. So TS2 together, close as a single crochet, and then single crochet right next to it. You're going to repeat this throughout the rest of the row. So like I'll finish this one and I'll show you what that bind off row looks like so that you have a side-by-side view. So here's the side without the bind off, and here's the bind off. And the bind off is going to give us an easy row as well to crochet that border. So if you don't want that border, you can just stop after the bind off. All right, so I'll complete this and then I'll show you how to start that border. All right, so we're here at the end of the row, and we're going to just complete these last 2 stitches of the bind off, or I guess 3 technically if you count that final stitch. So there's that one, and then in the space right next to our vertical stitch, I can grab my yarn, there we go, and then in that final end of the row. And that completes our bind off. Now this is where you're going to switch your hook. So I'm going from my 5.5 millimeter Tunisian hook to a 4.25 just regular hook. Because from here on out, this is going to be regular crochet for the border, not Tunisian, so you don't need a Tunisian hook anymore. So we're going to begin with a chain of 3. So chain 1, 2, 3, and then you're going to turn your work around. So you're going to be looking at the back of the shawl. So that's what the back of the stitch looks like. And then we're going to begin by skipping the first 2 stitches of the row. So the first stitch is right here where you see the chain. So here's stitch number 1, and then there's stitch number 2. We're going to work into stitch number 3, and we're going to work a double crochet. For those of you that don't know how to work a double crochet, you're going to yarn over, you're going to insert your hook into the stitch. Remember, it is the third one from your hook. Yarn over and pull up a loop. Once you have 3 loops on your hook, you're going to yarn over and pull through the first 2. You're going to be left with 2 loops, and you're going to yarn over and pull through those. And that's a double crochet. So then you're going to chain 1, skip 1, skip this next stitch, go to the one after, and you're going to double crochet. So yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. Once you have 3, yarn over, pull through 2 of those loops, and then yarn over, pull through 2. And that's it. So chain 1, skip 1, double crochet. And you're going to work this until you get to the end of the row. And then I'll show you how to do the stitching in the corner so that you can turn and continue working the border on all 4 sides. For those of you that are more advanced and just kind of want to get ahead, once you get to the corner, you're going to do 3 double crochet. They're going to have that corresponding chain stitch right after, so it's going to be double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1 in the corner stitch. Skip the next one, and then just continue working the double crochet, chain, skip 1. So for those of you that need to see it, give me just a moment to get here, and then I'll show you how to do this corner stitch. Okay, so once you get to the end, right here, I've got just the final stitching. But once you get to the end, this is a pretty good time to see if you need to switch hooks. So I tightened my stitches just a bit so you can see what it looks like. So it's a little bit tight here. Now, if you tend to crochet with a really tight tension, then you might want to switch to an either a 4.5 millimeter hook or a 5 millimeter hook. And that will give you a little bit more spacing between the stitching. Otherwise, you can always just pull it a little bit and you're good to go. But yes, if you have a tight tension, what's going to happen is that your the border for your shawl is going to pull everything in tightly like this, and you're going to end up with kind of a bubbled up shawl. So if you need to switch hook, pull out your stitching and then just switch hook. Begin at that chain 3 and then just repeat all the stitching that we just did. Alright, so moving on. And I twisted this here, so let's get that untwisted. Once you get to the corner, so here's this corner stitch. I just did my double crochet, so I need a chain 1. We're gonna do 3 double crochets in this same corner stitch. So we have the first one, and then you have to chain 1, and then second double crochet also in that same stitch, chain 1, and then we have a third in the same stitch, so that your corner looks like this. So you have 3 double crochets with the chains in between in that corner stitch. That's going to give us a nice turn. We can now turn our work to the side, skip that first stitch, go to the second one. So we did that double crochet, so we need a chain. So it's always double crochet, chain, double crochet, chain. So now we skip one, go to the next one, and we continue the same sequence. So double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, double crochet in the next. Chain 1, skip 1, double crochet. And then we're going to get to that corner stitch again, which this one looks kind of funny, so you can't really see it too well, but here we go. So here's that corner stitch. Remember, we have to skip 1. I have my chain, and in the corner stitch, again, it's 3 double crochets with the chains in between. So that's the first one, and we chain 1, double crochet number 2, chain 1, double crochet number 3, chain 1. So there's the 3 of them, and we turn our work around. And then you repeat this for the remaining 2 sides of the border. So that's how it looks. So let me complete the sides, and then I'll show you how to close out this corner, because it's going to be just a little bit different than these other 3 corners. So let me get there, and then I'll show you what that looks like. All right, so we've completed the round, almost. So I'll show you how to close it here. Once you get to the end, so here's that first chain 3 that we did at the beginning of the border. We still have that skip 1. I've done my double crochet and my chain. So now instead of doing 3 double crochets in the corner, we already have one made for us. So we only need to make 2. So we have double crochet 1 here in this corner stitch, and then you chain 1, double crochet number 2, again in the corner stitch, chain 1, and then we're going to join this last stitch of the round with this first one. So the easiest way, if you're new to crochet, find that chain. So here's that topmost chain, and here's a double crochet, right? go to the stitch right next to it. You're going to insert your hook into that stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. We're going to close this with a slip stitch, so you're going to pull this top loop through this bottom loop, and that's a slip stitch. Alright, so there we go. For those of you that are more advanced, the next row is a single crochet row, and it goes like this. You begin with a chain 1, and then in this chain space, you're going to single crochet, and then on top of the double crochet, you single crochet. So it's single crochet here, single crochet at the top of the double, single here, single up here, until you get to the corner. So I will show you how to do this rest of it, but this is for those that are a little bit more advanced. You're going to continue that single crochet sequence until you get to this corner stitch. In the corner stitch, find this middle double crochet. At the top of this double crochet, you're going to do 3 single crochets and then continue with the remaining sequence. So single crochet in here, then here, then here, then here, and so forth. It's just this cornermost stitch that gets 3 single crochets in order to give it that turn. All right, for all the rest of us, we are going to be working over here. So here's that chain space. So the space right in here, you're going to insert your hook into the chain space, yarn over and pull up a loop. Once you have both of your loops, you're going to yarn over and pull through 2 for your single crochet. Now here's the double crochet, and as you can see at the top, there's a stitch right here. You're going to insert your hook into that stitch. Only here, I need to do it in the correct stitch. So here's my double crochet, here's my stitch. I insert my hook into the stitch. We've got 2 loops, and we're just going to yarn over and pull through both. So again, single crochet in the chain space, and then in the stitch right above that double crochet. Alright, so I've reached the corner stitch, and this is for the single crochet row for the border, and then we're just going to work those 3 single crochets into this middle double crochet. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and then we have the double crochets right here. So this is the middle one and then the last one. So we have the chain space between those 2, and then the stitch, which is kind of difficult to see, but for that last double crochet, so right up in here, that sounded funny. Okay, and then we get to that chain 1 that we did at the beginning of the row. Now if you're not sure if it's the chain 1, try putting the hook in. It's not going to fit very easily. So that's how you know you've reached the chain 1. You're going to insert your hook into the first single crochet of the row. So see, it slips pretty easily. And you're going to slip stitch to close the round. So we have this top loop goes through this bottom loop, and there you go. For those of you that are more advanced, we're going to repeat this same sequence for the double crochet and then do 1 more row of single crochets for that double border. For those of you that are not, don't worry, we'll work on this together. Remember that when you get to the corner stitch, so here we go, look for this middle double crochet where we have the 3 single crochets. Now you're going to look for the centermost single crochet. So here's the first one, here's the middle one, and here's the last one. In the middle one is where you're going to do the 3 double crochets with their respective chain ones. So that's where you're going to do your turn. Other than that, the rest of it is pretty much the same. For those of you that need to see this border one more time, let's start with a chain 3. So we've got 1, 2, 3. We're going to skip 2 stitches because we are using this first one right here where the chain is coming out. We're going to skip this. We're going to skip this one, and we're going to begin on the 3rd one. So let's pick up the yarn again. So we begin with a double crochet and then chain 1. We're going to skip a stitch, go to the next one and double crochet, and then chain 1. Skip, double crochet, chain, and then you just repeat the sequence until you get to the corner stitch. Alright, so I've completed my round, and this is for that second double crochet round, and we're here at the corner, so this is the last one before we have to close up our round. So for this, we've already done, or I guess I've already done, the 3 double crochets for the corner stitch. So I've done that, and the chain 1. So we're going to skip a stitch, double crochet into the next one, chain 1, and then we get to that chain 3 that becomes that first double crochet of the round. We're going to close out with a slip stitch. So again, you're going to look for that center stitch, and go to the one right next to it. So this topmost one, go to the one right here, and then slip stitch to close the round. And then you begin with a chain one, and then you do one last row of single crochets. So again, it's a single crochet in the chain space, and then a single crochet in that right above that double crochet all the way around. When you get to the corner stitches, remember that you have to do the 3 single crochet, and that's right above this middle double crochet. You do the 3 single crochets, and that's it. So complete the round like I showed you in the last single crochet row, or the last single crochet round. That's a lot of words apparently. And that's it. The only thing you have left to do is once you finish, complete your last single crochet, and then you're going to chain 1. This is going to make a nice little knot at the bottom. Leave a long tail of yarn and cut it, and then pull your yarn and your hook and tighten that knot. You're going to be left with just a little tail end of yarn like this, which you will then later weave in. Now, because I get a lot of questions about how to weave in all of your tail ends when you're working with Tunisian crochet, I left some tail ends here on the actual shawl. Where is it? Here it is. So I left the tail ends so that I could show you how to weave those in. Now, for those of you that are using this same yarn or any other yarn that you had to join your ends together, all you do is just a double knot. So you get the 2 threads of your skein. So the first, or what is it, the end yarn and then the beginning of the other skein. Loop them together like this, and then just make a knot. But leave a nice long tail end like this so that you can later weave that in. So longer tail ends are generally easier to weave in than anything too short. But for those of you that don't know how to weave these in, give me just a moment to grab my yarn needle, and then I'll show you how to weave this in, and that's it. When you're weaving in ends for Tunisian crochet, at least what I have found has been probably the easiest thing to do, is to hide it within the return pass. So you're going to be working on the back side of your work. So here's the back, here's the front. So working with the back side of the stitching, depending on the type of stitch that you used, sometimes you can work with the vertical posts, but most of the time I just stick to the return pass, and I'll just pick one. So like this thread I'll do on this top one, and the other thread I'll do like on the bottom one or on a different one. That way it doesn't make that particular thread where we hide the tail end, where we weave it in, it won't make it too thick or noticeable. Anyway, so you're just going to insert your needle through the return pass and just go a little ways. Now once you've done that, you're going to go in the opposite direction. Don't go in right where your needle came out. Scoot it to the side, otherwise you'll just pop that stitch that you just made right out. So give yourself a little space, go right next to it, and then stitch in the opposite direction. Make it as superficial a stitch as you can, and what I mean by that is don't go in too deep, because then if you go on the other side and it pops through too much, it might be a little more visible. So try to make it a little more close to the top or towards the back of the work as you're weaving in tail ends. Now, if you have a stitch that's kind of like this one that has a little bit a thicker vertical stitch like this, you can hide your tail ends like you would with any other crochet work, just in a bit of a square shape. So you can start stitching, you can stitch up, hide that through the stitching here, and then just go in a bit of a square until you hide that complete tail end. That doesn't always work. Like I said, it depends on the Tunisian stitch that you use. This one, it just so happens to work, so I can hide my tail ends in a bit of a square shape. If you find that you no longer have enough yarn to do that last stitch, so let's pull that here to the end, then I'm going to insert the needle this way, but it keeps popping out. And all you do is just insert the needle where you want the stitch to go, and then thread that through. And then just stitch until you don't have any more tail end, or once you've gone around in a square shape in this case, or you've gone back and forth a few times, you can cut whatever tail end is left. So right around here, I can cut this bit off. All right, and there you go.
That was our shawl pattern for today. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you'd like to see more of my work, you can follow me on Instagram, and to get the PDF pattern, you can go to modebespoke.com. The link is in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all again in the next video.